مع انطلاق فعاليات مهرجان طيران الإمارات للآداب أمس، الكل عندهم فرصة للقاء أهم الأدباء الكتاب والشعراء بالعالم مع تواجد المئات منهم في دبي. ومن بين اللي تواجدوا بالدورة ال15 لهالحدث الممثل العالمي براين كوكس، حيث أقيمنا أمس جلسة حوارية تحت عنوان براين كوكس شكسبير Success and Succession، وتفاصيل هالندوة في Tracking Story No. 1. بهالاستقبال الحافل براين كوكس التقى الحضور واللي فاجئوه بأعدادهم، فهو ما كان متوقع وجود قاعدة جماهيرية كبيرة له في الشرق الأوسط.
I had no idea. I mean, this is a puzzle to, not a puzzle, but I had no idea. It's very nice.
وكون زيارته الأولى للمنطقة جت في دبي، فبراين استمتع بكل لحظة قضاها هنا.
Very much. It's an amazing place. I mean, it's just quite an extraordinary city. I mean, the architecture individually is amazing, but when you put it all together, you think, I wonder what Frank Lloyd Wright would make of this. He would say, a lot of clash of styles.
ولكن مشاركته في مهرجان طيران الإمارات للآداب ما كان له علاقة بالعمارة، بل كانت للحديث عن سيرته الذاتية اللي صدرت في عام 2022 بكتاب حمل عنوان Putting the Rabbit in the Hat، لخص فيه قصة حياته من الطفولة، الأبوة، ومسيرته المهنية اللي قادته نحو العالمية.
Well, I figured if I don't write it now, I'll never write it, And also, really, it was about my parents, about my mum and dad. I wanted to honor them, and it was a way of really honoring their lives as much as about my life, because they're a common thread throughout the whole book, and the not very nice things that happened to both of them. I mean, my dad died far too young. He was 51, and my mother had these terrible nervous breakdowns. So it's really the whole impetus. I mean, I was commissioned to write it as well, but I'd always wanted to write about my family, and it was a great excuse to do so.
وعبر صفحات كتابه وللمرة الأولى براين كشف عن الحزن اللي رافقه لسنوات بعد وفاة والده لما كان في سن الثامنة.
It's very funny. I discovered that, and I only discovered it recently. I love television. In fact, I'm having a problem with. I'm not very good at Arabic, so I'm having a problem with the television here. But I love the television. I wondered why I loved the television so much, and I realized that the day of my dad's funeral, I was sat in front of the television, and that was like a comforter to me, in a way. And I think that's what that's kicks off,
وحب الكبير للتلفزيون يقابل حب كبير للمسرح، حيث وجد براين شغفه في الحياة من أيام مراهقته، لا سيما في أعمال ويليام شكسبير.
As I get older, I realize how astonishing, if you think of Mozart and music, you think of Shakespeare and playwriting, dramatic writing. And Shakespeare says so much. And as I get older and I read Shakespeare again, I discover how real he is, how true he is, how accurate he is about certain situations, particularly in relationship to the theatre. And what, Hamlet's advice to the players is still the greatest advice you can give to any young actor. And it still stands. Don't saw the air, don't do this, don't do that. Use your vocal abilities well. I mean, it's amazing. He was such a visionary.
وهذا اللي جعل براين يقضي سنوات من حياته على خشبة المسرح وهو يؤدي أدوار شهيرة من مسرحيات شكسبير مثل الملك لير وتيتس أندرونيكس.
Titus Andronicus is a younger man writing and a younger man dealing with older age, and he's kind of rubbing Titus's nose in it in a way in the dirt. And then he gets older and he goes through his own sense of rejection, which I think he had within his own family, and then he writes King Lear. And King Lear is a much tougher play in many ways because it cuts at the heartstrings much more, whereas there's an element of Titus where he's experimenting with sadness, he's experimenting with tragedy, he's experimenting with so much. It's brilliant in a way, but it's also experimental. And that's what I love about him. He kept learning, and his plays kept developing and the writing kept developing.
كذلك براين كوكس استمر في التطور وقدم أدوار مميزة في أعمال سينمائية شهيرة منها بريف هارت، تروي، تشرشل ونورنبرغ.
Am I all alone? Am I all that's left?
أما الدور اللي عرف فيه مؤخرا فجاء ضمن المسلسل الحائز على الجوائز سكسيشن، إذ قدم فيه دور لوغان روي عميد الأسرة المالكة لإحدى أهم شركات وسائل الإعلام واللي يتحارب أبنائه الثلاثة للسيطرة عليها.
You're not a killer. You have to be a killer. But nowadays, maybe you don't. I don't know. I think that Logan's a complicated man, and therefore he's an interesting man to play, because there's so many, in many ways, internally there's so many facets to him. Externally he seems rude, he seems misanthropic, and he's all of those things. But his root is something else. And I think that when you read, when little moments that we never dwelt on, like when he went swimming, he had these scars on his back, so that you begin to build a picture of the man in terms of his backstory, which you contribute a lot to, the actor does. I mean, Jesse is a genius, Armstrong, our creator. So he gives you the material, and then you fill in the gaps. And then you look at this life and you say, what happened to this man? When did he become such a misanthrope? When did his life become such a disappointment to him? And when did his ruthlessness kick in? And you realize that he's a product of his background. And I think we all are.
وبانتظار صدور الجزء الرابع من هالمسلسل الشهر القادم، براين كشف لنا عن العمل الاستثنائي اللي بيشغله خلال الفترة القادمة.
I am about to direct at my ripe old age my first movie. Hopefully, I mean, touch, if there's any wood, I'll touch it, even suspicious, you see. I think there's wood under this chair. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to direct this movie, which is set in my home country in Scotland. And it's a movie about roots. It's about where you come from and how where you come from defines you. But also, if we really think about it, it also can liberate you. And I think that's what people forget. You're not locked by your roots. You're actually, roots is part of something that grows into a tree or grows into a wonderful bush. So there's so much that you realize comes out of where you come from.
وإلى جانب هالفيلم اللي بيعيده إلى جذوره، براين كوكس بيعود قريبا إلى خشبة المسرح اللي دايما ساكنة في قلبه.
I'm going to go back to the theatre. I'm going to go back and I'm doing a play about Bach, which I'm going to play Bach. And which is, I'm going to do that in the autumn of this year. And then in the new year of 2024, I start rehearsing Eugene O'Neill's Long Day's Journey into Night, which is about a theatrical family. And I have a theatrical family, and I have sons who are actors, and my wife is an actress. So it's something that I've always wanted to do. It's a play I love. It's his last play, and this is probably, arguably, his greatest play. So I'm going to do that as well. So I'm going back on the boards.